trying to convince other people of the truth, becoming the teacher of involuntary students. I'd like to address this force that moved through us, especially once we've started to unravel what it's like to be ourselves, when maybe we start to see through that our modern days, the way we look at being human, might not actually be all there is to know. And usually there's this tendency to tell other people, to make them listen, to make them see what we've seen. And it's such an easy trap to go into. I've seen it in myself. You end up in conversations with people where it becomes more of a battle. You both have gone into the fence trying to make the other one understand that they're wrong. But what usually happens is that you lose connection with the other person. None of you are learning anything. And most of all, the feeling in my own body becomes rigid, it becomes contracted, and I'm pushed more into thinking that I know things. It's the opposite of relaxing back into curiosity, into not knowing. And this is, sadly, I'd like to say, because it's not uncommon in spiritual communities. The people go in and correct other people's perspective of themselves. I don't think it comes from maliciousness or wanting to create tension, but that's usually the case. That's what happens. And it can make some of us, me for instance, withdraw because it's no longer a comfortable space to explore in. And I've been guilty of doing this as well. So I'm not letting myself off the hook. But there are ways to help ourselves to not get stuck in that. And one of the ways to do that is to be quite cautious that what I'm saying now, does it come because I want to change the other person? I want to make them stop or letting go of a way of seeing the world and themselves. Then we can probably back up. And that doesn't mean that the conversation has to end, but we can invite something else. We can invite curiosity. Like what you're saying sounds absolutely bananas to me, but I'm here to teach myself. I am the student. And you can teach me what life looks like from your perspective. That doesn't mean I will ever agree with your perspective, but it is the truth that it is your perspective. How do you see the world and makes you come to that conclusion? You say the word insight, you say seeker, you say personhood. What do you mean with those words? Please tell me. And that way you can learn and you can show empathy and you can show curiosity. There's a connection flowing between the two of you. And if the other person is open, you can ask them, would you like to hear my perspective? But some people aren't ready for that. And then there's not much you can do. And if you get lectured on someone else's truth, if there's no curiosity towards you or how you experience the world, as if someone's coming from a position of superiority rather than from curiosity. And we can usually feel the difference in our nervous systems. You don't need to stay in those conversations if you don't feel like it. You can save your energy for interactions that are open for mutual exploration, where curiosity is alive, free-flowing. There's also a bit of truth in knowing your own limitation. And changing someone else's mind is one of those limitations. Someone who's not inviting your perspective won't be open to listen even if you share it. And for me, this has been a bit of a journey. But if they're not interested, I have to accept that defeat, kind of. And it might mean that I have to sit with disappointment or sadness or grief. But then I give back their freedom. They don't have to understand me unless they want to. They have the right to say no. I am here to teach myself about life. I'm not responsible for someone else's teaching. And that creates a safe field. Because that means that regardless of where you are on this path, if you just put your first foot in and started questioning, who thinks my thoughts? Or if you've lived totally aligned in the essence of yourself for decades, you become equals. You share curiosity. Wow, what is it like for you to have just put your foot into exploring yourself? Tell me about it. What do you see from that perspective? Because the only way for me to find out what it's like for this person is to ask questions. And I get to hear their truth. And that's a blessing. That's a gift. I don't need to decide whether I agree with what they are telling me about the world, but I can show interest in what they see. And that creates an environment or a field where everyone's welcome. Is not about stating the absolute truth, using the perfect spiritual terms, having it all figured out. Because the truth is, none of us can state the absolute truth in words. As soon as we try, we've already failed. And that's the beauty of it. Because then it doesn't become a battle. It doesn't become a battle like, does awakening mean that you lose track of your personhood? Or does awakening mean that you wake up from a dream? Or does awakening mean that you merge with the one? All of those definitions are fundamentally wrong, and if you want to attack them, you can. But anything that you say is open for attack as well. What is more interesting, for me anyway, is understanding with what do you mean when you say awakening is about merging with the one. Please tell me your perspective. And the thing is, people blossom in curiosity. We want to be seen by each other. Life wants to be seen by life. And when we feel like we're talking to someone who's genuinely curious, not faking curiosity, then we're much more fluid. We're open to actually, that's a good question. I've never thought about that. And then we work our way back. I might get new insights from your curiosity. And you might get new insights from my perspective of the world. It becomes a win-win interaction. And we nourish connection. We nourish love between each other. And that's where life is fun. It's not about, or at least not for me, it's not about who wins the intellectual contest. Who has most knowledge about the origin of the Bhagavad Gita? I am not a scholar in Vedanta. I am not an expert in Buddhism. I don't know the historical details of Ramana Maharshi's impact in his time. Ultimately, there's going to be someone out there who has more knowledge than me. And they are not a threat to me. They're a gift. I can learn from them in my own pace. So this is an invitation to let's together create a space where we can explore, when we can put things into words, and then the next day we can change ourselves because something switched. We cannot teach someone else something unless they are willing to learn. And usually, the teacher and the student roles switch. When you speak, you are my teacher and I'm your student. When I speak, I am your teacher and you're my student. We're friends. You might have more knowledge than I do in some areas. But I have more knowledge than you do in some areas, even if it's just what is it like to be me. I'm an expert in that. And you're an expert in what it's like to be you. What does the universe look like from your perspective? And you can grace me with that knowledge. You can share that. I will never know that unless you share it. If we end up in debate about who's right or who's wrong, we can debate that till the end of times. It's more interesting, why do you see the world that way? What makes you think in those circles? What do we disagree on? Trace me back to where our opinion starts to diverge. And maybe one of us will change our opinions. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll just leave the conversation richer, understanding each other better, not necessarily agreeing. Do you feel this tendency in yourself, this wanting to teach someone else, wanting to correct them, before curiosity about what they actually mean has arisen? If you do, you're not alone. I feel it as well. The invitation is not to follow it, to choose curiosity, to choose aliveness and flow. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope to see you next time.